Hi, and welcome to Safe Space. I'm your host, the artistic psychologist. This podcast aims to end the stigma surrounding mental health, one conversation at a time. Welcome, and I hope you enjoy. Today we have Brian on the show. He will be sharing with us his story about the loss of his cousin, someone he described as his best friend, and how he has been dealing with his grief. How are you doing, Brian?
I'm good, Pauline.
How are you feeling today?
I'm okay. All is good.
Okay. Are you excited to be on the show?
It's my first time on a podcast, so I'm a bit nervous, but we'll be good.
Okay, then. We're just going to jump right into it, yeah? Could you tell us a little bit about your late cousin? How would you describe him?
Okay, Byron, my late cousin was named Byron Ogola Anyanzo. Our names almost sound similar. We grew up with him. I went to the same schools. So apart from being a cousin, he was my best friend. And when we came to Nairobi, of course, now with the adult life, everyone had to go their separate way. I still communicated with Byron, and all was good between us. We shared a lot. Actually, he was literally like an assistant to me because he was street smart and I was kind of book smart. So we always complimented each other. But he shocked me, and up to date, I've never recovered from it when he committed suicide without even a suicide note left behind to explain the reason for his actions. And up to date, we buried him like a month ago, and up to date, we've never known why, because he looked happy from his posts. He was always a happy man, posting memes and jokes. He had 3 kids. Life looked okay to him. In fact, I always thought that I was the one catching up to him. Now, I've never understood why he chose to commit suicide, especially someone with 3 kids, a good job, and happy generally. Actually, he was the life of the party whenever we were together. So I've never understood how such kind of person would reach a decision to commit suicide.
Yeah. You've mentioned that he seemed happy, like everything was okay. What would you describe as happiness? Is it that outward appearance you're talking about? Like he had a family, he had a job?
I would say some from my own perceptions of him, some from what he made us look at, and some from general hearing from what people around, the mutual friends we shared, how they would talk and describe him. Personally, I would see him happy because he was always jovial. In fact, I was the one who was always like having mood swings also, because you'd always find me on my phone. Whenever I was with him, we'd be even at a parties, trying to crack jokes with people, move around, meet new people. I was always the one at a corner, just fiddling with my phone. So he looked to me like someone who had figured out his social life, his personal life. I would see his social media posts. He was okay, like he would generate a lot of engagements from just sharing jokes. Like he was relatable. He was like the common guy in the room. Now, from his friends, maybe his siblings, I could tell they could speak nicely of him, because whenever there was a function, they would want Byron to be there because they know Byron is likely to make things lively. So, plus having a family with 3 kids, I don't understand how you would have a large family and you don't. Anyway, that was up to him. But the general perception was that Byron was okay, because he didn't look like someone who would hide or bottle things up. And him being a best friend to me, we shared a lot. So I expected, like, even if he was going through difficult times, he would reach out and maybe tell me whether it was a financial problem or a social problem, whatever problem it is. I expected that by being a best friend, he ought to have shared a lot with me.
Okay. And before this incident, did you choose to share a lot apart from the joy and good times? Was he open about anything he's suffering about?
I would say that when he married is when our lives a bit started drifting apart, which I understand. When someone now starts to commit to his family, he starts spending more time with their family. So that's when our time together started drifting apart. So mostly we'd meet when I had an engagement for him. I would tell him, Byram, I want you to do something for me. Go here, do this. So he would willingly oblige and do it for me. So our social interaction started going down. We'd mostly just talk online, like we would chat, we'd catch up on things, share jokes and memes. And if there was an assignment, I would ask him to do it for me. So I would say at some point we started drifting apart, but I still considered him our best friend because we would talk like on a daily basis.
Okay, let's backtrack a little bit. Yeah, you mentioned to me that one thing that was really significant about your relationship with your cousin is that he helped you out when it came to the relationship with your dad. Yeah, could you tell us some more about that and why this mattered to you so much?
Okay, I'm raised by a single mother, strong woman. I had an estranged relationship with my father. In fact, I tried to connect with him when I was in Form 2. That is the stage where someone is trying to discover himself. For most people, it happens at 16, 14 years. So I looked for contacts. I tried to reach out to the man. The first time it failed. The second time it failed. So Byron was a cousin from my father's side, but we grew up together near with my mother. So he's the one, since being the one who was socially active, he reached out to all these people. He knew them by their names. So he was the one who was trying to find a middle ground between me and my father, because my father started reaching out to me when now I finally came to get a good job. I settled down mentally. I was okay. Life looked like it was starting finally to happen for me. It's when now I started seeing texts from my father. So I'm wondering, oh, so you have my number? Didn't even know this. So Byron actually, a lot of people used to tell me, ignore him. You've already figured yourself out. Just go on with your life. But Byron would always be that person who would tell you, you still need him. He's your father, even if your relationship is not okay. At some point, you'll discover you'll need him, because he was just telling me a lot of stuff. Sometimes, some of them even traditional, like how when you're going to marry, you'll need your father to be there. A lot of stuff. So I could listen to him, and he had a genuine connection with people from my father's side. So something at the back of my mind always told me that Byron will be useful in getting me to repair this relation with my father, because I always knew at some point we'll have to have a man talk with him and just get the issue over and move on. So he arranged our first meeting sometime last year. It didn't work out, but he kept communicating. Like, he was like a middle ground between us. So he would pass information from this side, I would pass information. So finally it looked like we were clicking, like the information was flowing. We were agreeing. Nobody was being forced to go somewhere or to do something. We were finally having a middle ground, and we were working towards now having a physical meeting. The three of us tried to see how it would go, because this is somebody I remember seeing must be when I was 4 or 5 years. So when Byron passed, it looked like he had gone with all hopes that I had of reconnecting with this man. I don't know if it will happen. I don't know, because it all depended on Byron, since he was the guy, he was the fixer.
It seems to me that when Byron passed away, yeah, you're grieving the death of your friend, but it also seems like you're grieving this relationship that was coming up with your dad. Yeah, is it fair to say that? How do you feel about that?
I feel like all progress has disappeared, because to be honest, ever since Byron passed, they formed a WhatsApp group. We contributed money, tried to talk things out. Lakini ever since everything went cold, I feel like all progress that had been done has been undone. I don't know, maybe, never say never, but I don't know what will happen in the future. I don't know if perhaps maybe it stands up to me now that I'll have to pick from where he left and try see if I can salvage something.
Okay. Do you remember the day that you received the news that your cousin had passed away? How was that for you?
I always remember the day. And when I received the news, I was sure they were talking about the wrong person, especially when they mentioned the suicide part. I was sure I actually asked them to confirm if they were talking about, if we were talking about the same person. I couldn't believe it, to the extent that I tried to call his phone, just hoping that he would pick. He always picks my phone because he knows me. He always picks my phone. It never happened. Then, being a popular guy, of course, social media posts started flying around. It's when I confirmed that, yeah, it's true. The man is gone.
Sorry about that. What feelings did this event trigger towards your late cousin? Because sometimes when somebody commits suicide, the people who are left living sometimes feel angry or maybe frustrated, confused. Did any of that come up for you?
Yeah, I felt resentment because this was my best friend. Not that I forced the best friend on him. We used to tell each other this, that apart from just being cousins who grew up together, we were the best of friends. So I expected him to share with me, even that now that being adult, getting into the adult life, everyone was trying to live an independent life. I expected him to share with me. So his death has left more questions than answers. Answers that I may never find, and I might just have to move on, to end the chapter and move on, because everybody I talked to, in fact, everybody I used to ask that, why, kwa nini Byron ali commit suicide? Everyone would ask, like, wewe ndo tunafaa tukuulize hivyo juu mlikuwa pamoja all the time. So it left a very bad feeling to me. I would say almost resentment, because I would never understand why he would choose to commit suicide and never share a problem, however big he thought it was. Resentment is the feeling.
Resentment towards him?
Yes.
And is there any negative feeling you have towards yourself?
Yeah, naturally, I like to blame myself for failures that happen around me. I take it as another one because I feel like I could have done more. Maybe those phone calls he would call and I would not pick up because maybe I was in a meeting somewhere, or I was on the road, or I was just not feeling like picking anyone's phone. So I feel like I should have done more. Should have talked to him, especially when he got a family. I thought he was happy because he always looked like someone who wanted a large family. He was never ambitious, like you really want to be great. He was okay. He was contented a lot. So he was more of a family man. So I feel like I should have reached out, probed him more the way we used to do when we were young. Like it would be hard to tell, to keep a secret from each other. So maybe I should have been there more for him. With this adult life, you get caught up in so many things. You forget even about your close friends. I feel like I should have been more available to him. Yeah.
How did this loss affect your day-to-day life and just affect you generally? Is there anything you found yourself struggling with?
Big time. Byron was literally my assistant because it reached a point I got overwhelmed with work. So I would assign, especially some of my personal errands, I would assign because he was yet to get something really stable for himself. So he would always help out with my home stuff and sorting my mother's side. So he was literally like a helper to me, an assistant. So it has destabilized my day-to-day life. Now I have to do all these things by myself until I find someone who's capable enough to help. Yeah, it is a big dent. It is a big dent.
And in terms of work or pleasurable activities, did you find yourself struggling with any of that?
Yeah, July, I must say, surprisingly, my performance work-wise started well when I had the news, because now all I wanted to do was do something that would take the grief away from me. So you would see the first 2 weeks of my work was excellent. That was now before we buried him. Excellent, because I didn't want anything that would make me remember that this guy is normal. Now when the reality hit that now he's 6 feet under, I think I had the worst 3 weeks or so of my life, because I literally didn't want to do anything. And if I did it, it was the bare minimum.
We're currently in a pandemic, yeah. Do you feel this has in any way had any impact in your journey on grieving, maybe positively or negatively?
Finally, I get to break the dark, because I come from a very small family. So I've never experienced grief on a personal level. Like these are stories I just would hear. Oh, I lost my mother, I lost my father, but the small family I have, I've never lost someone close enough that it would puncture me. So it has given me lessons on empathy. Like I used to hear that, oh, sijui nani amekufa, pole sana kwa, like I would just slide on it and move on. Maybe it's my way of bottling things up or just blocking the emotion. But with Byron's death, I finally got to unlock the emotion, and it has made me more empathetic. I now understand, especially when it comes to grief, I now understand what it means to lose a close, especially somebody close, a family member or a friend. I now understand the feeling.
So it just brought the reality of death closer to home.
Yes.
After that, do you have a different perspective of life and death?
Still the same. We live, we die.
That's true. We all live and we die. Okay. How have you been coping? I know that, and you've allowed me to share this with the listeners, that you struggled with alcoholism before. As you were going through this, were you triggered in any way? Did you feel like you would slip back into the habit?
It's true, because there are some nights that you unbearable, especially the reality that you have to deal with it. One or few times, I would be honest, the temptation got over me, because it's not an easy feeling. Anyone who has grieved before will tell you that it's not an easy feeling. And once or twice, you'd find yourself succumbing to the temptation, just for the sake of trying. I don't know if it's blocking the emotion or trying to forget the thing.
And how have you managed to deal with this, or just find healthier ways to cope?
Finally, I came to accept it, that that is the way it will be. I pace myself in with 2 weeks. So if 2 weeks passes and nothing has happened, no progress, no movement, I usually get done with that thing, move on, get rid. I just make changes. I came to accept that, yes, we buried him, I witnessed it. Like nothing will happen that will bring back the same feeling of the same friend I had. Nothing will be the same ever again. So I just found easier ways of coping. Like I now get out of the house more. I've joined activities, chasing some of my hobbies, just becoming a new person that I never thought I would be. So I feel like I've finished grieving. I had to release his spirit to go. However much I try to hide it, he will never be there again. I feel like I've gotten over the phase. I've picked some new habits, new hobbies. I feel like I'll be fine. I feel like I'll be fine.
God, that's a beautiful place to be at when you realize that, yeah, this is difficult, but I think at the end of the day, I will be fine. I think it's fair to say that society generally does not hold as much space for men to grieve or struggle as it does for women. Yeah. Do you feel like you've been able to safely and freely express your grief and your struggles, or has it been difficult?
I think I'm lucky in the sense that I wear my emotions on my collar. Like, when I'm happy, I'm happy. When I'm sad, I'm like, it's very hard for me to hide how I'm feeling. So I'm that kind of person. Even in a funeral, I'll be with the mothers wailing, and it will not look like a big deal for me. I'll just let go the emotions so that I can move. Like I've just said, like my emotions are on my collar, and you'll always notice. However much I try to put a poker face or something, you'll always notice Brian is okay, he's not okay, he's happy, he's sad. So I know, I don't know if it's cultural or something, but like men, we have a problem with expressing our emotions, especially with grief. You'd see people they want to cry in a corner. I don't know, maybe it's a topic for another day, but I wish people would just open up. Like, if it's especially something so serious like grief, I don't see why I would go and cry in a corner. There, where I am is where I'm going to cry.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's easier said than done. I'm glad at least you can say that you're able to do that. I think men will only be as open with their emotions as we allow them to be. And I think for the most part, we don't really hold that space for them to be so. So it's difficult for them to do so. Like, you'll find a man crying and you're being told, why are you crying? No, you need to be a man. You can't be crying. So then they turn to other things, which ends up being harmful for them.
Yeah, I find grief is something that is so personal, something that you can't hide. Like, if you loved someone and they get to die, like, it's not like you not pretend on it. So maybe I would urge people to be more open. Like, sometimes choose the things you want to be masculine about. Something like grief is not even something debatable. Should not even be brought on the table. Like, you should not grieve because you look like it look less masculine on you. Man, grieve.
Yeah, grieve. Allow yourselves to grieve. What or who have been helping you through this journey?
Unfortunately, I've been alone. Maybe perhaps it's my way of life. I like figuring out things by myself. Because I understand a few people tried to reach out to find if I was okay, but they usually get the same answer, I'll be fine. So I've been fighting the battle by myself. All looks good.
Do you wish it were different?
Yes, I really wish it were. I really wish I would be there before you would have made that decision. I'm sure I would have convinced him otherwise. I would have put all my cards on the table. I really wish it would have been different. Really wish it would have been. I really wish I was there. Because I see everything that happens afterwards. They took 3 hours to take him to hospital. I felt like a lot would have been done to change the situation. we would not be having this conversation if a lot of things went right immediately after someone noticed that he had taken poison. Yeah, I wish things would be different.
What has been the hardest part for you throughout this whole process?
This person was an integral part of my life. Like I'd said before, he was helping me out a lot. Apart from communicating with my father's side, he was helping me doing some personal errands. Now I've been forced to pick up the roles by myself, find a way forward. So the adjustment, there is some real adjustment to be done, considering this thing happened around July. It happened in July. So like 2 months later, still adjusting to some of the things that he used to do for me.
Is there anything you wish you told him before he passed away or did with him, perhaps?
Sometimes I wish that I would just have been there. I know him. I would have managed to convince him otherwise. Poison was not the best. I would have convinced him to choose life. I'm sure I would have been able to convince him to choose life.
So I'm sure this has been a very difficult journey for you. Where you're at now, do you feel like there's anything that gives you comfort or hope at the moment?
Not yet, but I know I'll be fine. For some of the important things this person was doing for me, like the reestablishing the communication link from my father's side, I'll find a way, but still a bit problematic, the whole thing moving on, because however much you try to lie to yourself that you've moved on, there are some little instances when a memory will hit, and then it will be real that this person is no longer there, especially if they were significant to your life. But I'll be fine.
You will be fine. Okay then. That's it. Thank you, Brian, for being open with me and with us and sharing your story and your journey with us. I know it's not an easy thing to talk about. Thank you for sharing your pain with us. That's all for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll join us next time as we continue this series on grief and grieving. See you soon.